The United States is flagging what it calls trade irritants in a new report, and it cites several measures here in Canada, including the federal government's Buy Canadian procurement policy and the decision to pull American alcohol off the shelves.
In a statement, Ontario's finance minister's office says until tariffs are completely removed, U.S. alcohol will remain off the shelves. It's likely all these issues could come up during the CUSMA review, with a deadline of July 1st, when the three countries have to decide whether to move ahead, get out, or land somewhere in between.
Can resolve within a minute. All President Trump has to do is get rid of the unfair tariff.
$1 billion American alcohol market in Canada didn't just decline, but it vanished overnight. Got wiped off shelves, bars, and supply chains in this insane, coordinated move. While officials downplayed it as a trade barrier, the reality was something else, something that benefits Canada only. And in the silence left behind, something far bigger and far less expected started to take its place. The ban did not begin today as a coordinated national policy issued from Ottawa, but it began in Ontario in January 2025 as a direct and explicit response to the Trump administration's imposition of a blanket 25% tariff on most Canadian imports. Ontario Premier Doug Ford announced the intent in a speech to the Rural Ontario Municipal Association before the tariffs officially took effect. The message was unambiguous. If tariffs came, every American alcohol product would be cleared from Liquor Control Board of Ontario shelves. When tariffs arrived, Ford followed through without delay. The LCBO had carried annual sales of up to $965 million in American wine, beer, spirits, and seltzers. More than 3,600 products sourced from 35 American states had been stocked across the system. All of it was pulled. British Columbia moved in parallel within days of the Ontario announcement, with government-run liquor stores beginning to remove what officials described as red state American alcohol brands from provincial shelves. Shelves that had held Jack Daniel's were left empty, in some locations replaced with signage reading, "Buy Canadian." Other provinces followed through subsequent weeks. As of April 2026, provincial bans on American-made spirits remain in place across Atlantic Canada, Ontario, Quebec, Manitoba, and British Columbia. Alberta and Saskatchewan have since lifted their respective bans, but the majority of Canada's population resides in provinces where American alcohol remains unavailable through any legal, retail, or wholesale channel. The scope of the Ontario enforcement extended further than most American producers anticipated when the bans were announced. The LCBO, as the sole importer of record for U.S. alcohol into Ontario, extended its exclusion to the entire procurement chain. No restaurant, bar, or licensed establishment in the province can source American alcohol through any wholesale channel. The Ontario Finance Minister directed the LCBO to inform American suppliers directly that their access to one of North America's largest alcohol markets was contingent on the complete removal of tariffs. The letter, obtained through a Freedom of Information request, told American suppliers to speak with their members of Congress about the impact of the situation on their businesses. The message traveled from provincial government to American producer to American legislator, through a supply chain built for moving bottles, not political pressure. Brown-Forman, the company behind Jack Daniel's, gave the clearest articulation of why a shelf removal operates differently from a tariff. CEO Lawson Whiting stated publicly that the Canadian policy was worse than a tariff, noting that a tariff raises costs while a shelf removal eliminates access entirely. A 25% tariff compresses margins and makes a product more expensive for consumers. A government-executed exclusion from every retail and wholesale outlet in a jurisdiction removes the product from the market regardless of price point or consumer willingness to pay. For producers whose Canadian sales represented significant export revenue, the operational impact of complete access removal was categorically different from what tariff pressure alone would have produced. U.S. goods exports to Canada fell to $336.5 billion in 2025, down nearly 4% from 2024, according to the same U.S. Trade Representative report that formally flagged the alcohol ban as a trade irritant. The alcohol ban is one component within that broader contraction, but it is the most politically visible because it is a centralized, government-executed exclusion of named American products from consumer-facing retail environments visible to every grocery shopper, every restaurant patron, and every industry observer in the country simultaneously. The formal U.S. government position, expressed through the Trade Representative's annual report published in late March 2026, characterized the provincial restrictions as requiring removal. U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, grouped the alcohol ban alongside the decline in Canadian tourism to the United States as part of why the Trump administration had characterized Canada as difficult to deal with in trade negotiations. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer listed the alcohol bans among the conditions Canada must address in order for the United States to extend the Canada-US-Mexico agreement ahead of the July 1st, 2026 review deadline. Ontario's response to that pressure has been consistent and unchanged. Finance Minister Peter Bethlenfalvy stated that American alcohol would remain off LCBO shelves until tariffs are completely removed. Premier Ford asked about the ban after Trump cited it directly in a social media post, said it was obviously working as an irritant, and identified one specific action that would resolve it: remove Canadian tariffs. The structural incompatibility embedded in the current negotiating positions is direct. Washington wants the bans lifted before or during CUSMA negotiations. Ontario has tied removal to the end result of those negotiations, meaning the tariff elimination itself, not the promise of it. The two positions, as currently stated, cannot be simultaneously satisfied without one side moving first. What the formal US government report does not capture is what has happened inside the Canadian alcohol market during the period the shelves sat empty. The space vacated by American brands has not remained unfilled. Canadian producers moved into it with speed and scale that the pre-ban market structure had not required of them. Maverick Distillery in Oakville, Ontario, founded in 2009 as the province's first licensed craft distillery, has seen its business transformed by the period since the ban took effect. Vodka sales through the LCBO increased 100%. Whiskey sales increased 300%. CEO Craig Peters described the growth as unbelievable, noting that the push toward buying Canadian products was generating real and measurable consumer demand rather than symbolic preference. The distillery is preparing to relocate to a larger facility and is carrying open job postings on the production side, with 25 people currently employed in manufacturing. Maverick's response to the specific demand gap left by American bourbon illustrated the speed with which Canadian producers adapted to the market opening. Using barrels of Kentucky bourbon already in their existing warehouse inventory, the company developed a Canadian whiskey and Kentucky bourbon blend, a product bottled in Oakville, Ontario, designed to serve consumers seeking a richer bourbon-style spirit without purchasing American product. A new tequila offering is also in development. Maverick is not an isolated case. Multiple spirit makers across Canada reported consistent growth tied to the ban. Odd Society Spirits in Vancouver introduced a strawberry gin produced with strawberries sourced from British Columbia's Fraser Valley, leaning explicitly into the Buy Canadian consumer sentiment that the provincial bans had amplified into a purchasing habit. The LCBO's Beverage Trend report from December 2025 showed Ontario VQA wine sales increased 58% during the year. Overall sales for provincially produced alcohol rose 20% across the system. The CUSMA review deadline arrives July 1st. The U.S. Trade Representative has placed alcohol bans on the formal list of conditions requiring resolution. Ontario has stated the condition for resolution is tariff removal. Canadian craft alcohol producers are expanding their facilities, developing new product lines, and filing job postings. U.S. goods exports to Canada are down nearly 4% in a single year. The billion-dollar market that existed before January 2025 has not simply paused, it has restructured around domestic supply in ways that will not automatically reverse when the policy conditions eventually change. Brown-Forman CEO described the shelf removal as literally taking sales away. The Oakville distillery, preparing to move into a larger building because it has outgrown its current facility, is the exact arithmetic of that description playing out on the Canadian side of the same equation.